Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Rebecca Heiss wants you to rewrite your brain. Today we'll find out why. Rebecca, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me on, Bill.
Rebecca, you've written a great book, to me a great book called Instinct. And you start off by saying our brains are not built for this world. And as I was kidding with you before the show, what were they built for? Where are we going to use them if not in this world?
Yeah, it seems like, if we could just go to a different world, that would be easier, right?
Easy, that's it.
Right. The reality is our brains aren't built for this world. They're built for the world of our ancestors, right? So it's still really the Earth. It's just the Earth about 2,000 to 200,000 years ago. So unfortunately, while we've had this massive increase in technology and populations and all this exponential change, biology doesn't operate on the same time frame. So biologically, the changes that our brains have made in the last 200,000 years are really tiny. There's really not been a huge amount of shift in the way we process information. And unfortunately, there's now a huge mismatch between the environment that our ancestors lived in, that our brain was actually built for, and the environment that we live in today. So that's what I mean when I say our brains aren't built for the world that we live in today.
Now, can we change this problem? And we've heard it from a lot of in different formats. And I often wonder, because why is this book starting off with the cavemen? And we've had that from many of our authors going back into history. Is this something we're able to change?
Yeah, that's the good news, right? The good news in all of this is that our brains are highly adaptable. Like, they're changing right now. Your brain is different right now than it was 30 seconds before you heard me say that sentence. So that's the good news, right? The good news is, classic example. Do you remember when you first drove a car, Bill? The first time you
I think a lot of people remember that. They have dents in their cars, but yes.
Exactly. Right? Your hands are 10 and 2 and you're like, oh my gosh, there are pedestrians and street signs and all this stuff that I have to process. Holy smokes. And then today, if you're driving along right now listening to this, you're listening to the radio, you're one hand on the wheel, you're leaned back, you're adjusting things as you go. You're not paying any attention. And that's great, because what that means is that you've trained your subconscious brain to do this complex, ever-changing task, like drive for you. So there's absolutely ample ways to change and develop our brain for the modern world, but we have to be cognizant of all the ways that it's not fully adapted.
Oh, I love that analogy, because as you were saying it, I'm just thinking a doctor who does knees or elbows or ears, they probably, once they've done X number of them, they pretty much are the same. And we driving a car may be in a much more dangerous spot, because if we don't follow even 2% of the rules, we could hurt somebody, even run over a small animal, or even if it's just denting the car or hitting a pole or something.
Yeah, this is actually, I used to be a climber. I used to climb, technical climb with belay and girth hitch and all of the things. And the day I quit climbing, I was in probably about 150 tall foot tree. And it was a windstorm, the branches are just going left and right. And I'm flying up there. And I had zero adrenaline. And that was the day that I quit climbing. Because what I realized, that's when we get into trouble, right? Is when we have outsmarted our instincts to that level where I'm actually in a life and death situation. And my brain and my body isn't signaling that this is a problem. I was like, this is when things get tricky, right? This is when accidents happen. So to your point, sometimes we get a little bit too comfortable with the way that our brains have adapted.
Rebecca, as you're answering questions, I'm getting thoughts, so I hope you don't mind if I shoot them into this interview. But
let's go.
All I could see, if you were one of my neighbors and I go out and I go to my wife, why is Rebecca in that tree? Why is she up there 150? Is that what you said? You climbed trees? Is that what you did?
Yeah. So I'll tell you the backstory on that, because it actually applies to the book. So I studied crows, American crows, for about a decade. And in order to get crows, they're really, really smart birds. And so we would tag them as nestlings. We'd climb these 150-foot tall trees and grab them straight out of the nest in order to snag them. Otherwise, once they're adults, they're a lot harder to trap.
How about something
there's a
like
whole chapter in my book on crows.
how about something like Old English authors or dandelions, things like that? The history of the squirrel. Isn't that a little safer? But that's of course up to you.
Probably safer, but I'll tell you, crows are so smart, and they make such a great model for humans. There's an entire chapter of my book dedicated to crows because they work in these really cooperative groups. So I think they're fascinating.
Rebecca, you mentioned in the book, you say we're behaving from a subconscious instinct rather than a conscious choice. Now, I'm thinking we go to school, we learn from gym teachers, piano teachers, everything. And of course, we're adding more and more school years, and most areas, professionals have continuing education in their fields. Mm-hmm. And yet we're going back to the subconscious. Is that a contradiction, or is that just an easy way out to rely on the subconscious?
Yeah, that's a great observation. It's not really an easy way out. It's the way our brains are structured. So if you think of the brain kind of as, three gross sections, let's really simplify it. We've got the amygdala, this emotional processing center. We've got the midbrain, and then we've got this frontal lobe. And what you're talking about, all of this learning, all of this higher learning, going to school and learning mathematics and reading and writing, that's all done in this frontal lobe, this conscious cognitive. And that's really where what we're aware of, right? So when you think about right now, all of the information that's coming into your brain, you're not aware of the temperature of the room until I just said it. You're not aware of that slight humming that you're hearing from the air conditioner or the fan until I said it. You're not aware of all of the colors in the room until I said it. So your brain is actually taking in about 400 billion bits of information every single second. So you're not consciously aware of all of that. You're only consciously aware of about 2,000 bits per second. So what that means is that 99.999999999, I don't know, you guys do the math for me, 99.99999% of that information is not being processed by our frontal lobe, is being processed by that more ancient subconscious portions of our brain that are dealing with, is this a life and death situation, right? Is it really, really cold? Do I need to do something? Is there a tiger charging me? How do I need to react? And it's activating all of these systems in our body to do life processes that don't rely on us knowing how to multiply 2 times 2.
As I read your book and I was thinking of questions to ask you, the way I thought of it was that if I hear a really loud noise, my first just reaction without thinking of anything else, arms would go up to, I guess, protect my face, my eyes, my head. And then I would look around. Was it a tree? Was it a bomb, a car backfiring, or, just something event that might happen? Is that what this is about? Is that how our body reacts? That, just to something we might hear or see and do a reaction that cavemen would do?
Yeah, you nailed it, Bill. I mean, that reaction, that immediate, you're not thinking about, I need to protect my head. You are instinctively raising your arms, lowering your head, and only then does your conscious brain catch up and say, what was that? Right? I'm alive. What's my next reaction? So you're going to have this immediate fight or flight reaction. And really, it's a fight, flight, or freeze. We don't talk about the freeze enough. I can talk about that in a minute. But fight, flight, freeze. What that means is your body kicks in adrenaline and then secondarily cortisol. And that's about 30 seconds after that. That immediate sound that you hear, that's the thing that triggers all of these subconscious processes to begin in your body. And what it's doing is your brain is going, what do we do? What do we need to do to survive? So it shuts down digestion, it shuts down reproduction, it shuts down all of the unnecessary things in that moment and causes you to react, whether that's to flee the situation, raise your arms in defense, start swinging wildly, right? Or stand very, very still. Those are completely subconscious reactions. And then and only then your conscious brain catches up and says, what is that? What do I need to do about it? What's my secondary reaction?
And if I've copied this down correctly from your book, and I think you use this exact word, we're lousy at telling the difference between real and perceived threats. So did I get that right?
Yeah, you nailed it. And actually, this is where I think the stress response, where humans get into trouble. Because I'll quote Robert Sapolsky here, who's one of my favorite researchers, and he has some incredible work on the stress response. And he says, stress is really built for about 3 screaming, terrifying moments on the savannah. And after those 3 minutes, you shouldn't be having a stress response because you're either dead, right? Or the stressor's over. But the reality is what humans do is we are the only species that is really smart enough to think ourselves into trouble. So you ask the regular Joe on the street today, hey, are you stressed? And their answer is going to be, yeah, of course I'm stressed. I've got this deadline. I've got this. I've got so many obligations. And what we do is we actually create psychological stressors for ourselves that feed into this stress response, that keep our cortisol high, that keep our adrenaline up, that actually are really, really unhealthy. Because this stress response, right, is built for 3 terrifying moments on the savannah, not for day-to-day life. And I think that's where we're really getting into trouble today.
Rebecca, we want to find out more, but at this point in the show, I want our audience to know, and if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is Rebecca Heiss, Heiss. Her book is simple, one word, Instinct. And Rebecca, we're going to ask you, can you tell us, is there a website where we could learn more about this? Because this is fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is just my name. It's www.RebeccaHeiss.com.
And we'll give that to our audience later on. Again, we'll ask you for it. And also to our audience, if you missed part of the show or you want to hear this again, you can go to nccradio.org. And that's nccradio.org. Look for Secrets of Success. The book is Instinct. And you can hear a podcast of the show and go back and hear all these interesting things that Rebecca is talking about. Now, Rebecca, today you talked about sensory overload, etc. I think at any time, the amount of information, and sometimes I personally just shut it down because I feel I can't, if I keep piling it on, it's just like, wait, that's going to be too heavy and I'm going to fall. And I think of that in a mental context. Does that apply to this, and how does it interfere with our instincts? Is it overwhelming them? Is the sensory information winning?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about the environment of a cave person, right, where our brains were evolved to survive in, the day-to-day was pretty simple. You know, you're experiencing some weather, maybe you might have to worry about a predator, you're interacting with your kin. But the information that we have today is, I would argue, potentially dangerous if we're not treating it carefully. The number of pings and dings and things going off are constantly distracting. And if we don't treat them as, well, tigers, which I think most of us do, right? That ping, that ding, that immediate thing that we have to do. Oh my gosh, if I don't do it, it's gonna kill me. That's eliciting stress responses again and again and again, rather than recognizing that we live in an environment where there's a ton of distractions, and we're going to have to strategically limit and block our distractions so that we can actually get anything done. Otherwise, all of those things really call at our attention bias, right? So again, thinking about the world that our ancestors evolved in, anything that was pinging or dinging or like having these immediate, even the red notifications on your phones, that's calling your attention. That is tapping into something much deeper, saying, hey, this is dangerous. You need to pay attention to me. And what that's doing is it's really pulling our attention away from any true deep work and deep thinking.
Now, it gets scary when I keep hearing that, because that phone is pinging all day, and I try to keep mine to a probably more of a minimal, the lowest 5%, just because I don't like to be interrupted. But I see people, they put it away, they take it out. I see even older people like myself where they're very much wrapped up in it. I'll be talking to them, and I think it's something important. And they, what did you say? I'm looking at the weather on my phone. Well, we're inside. The weather isn't going to affect you, blah, blah. Is that getting worse and worse and worse?
Yeah, I think it is. And, this is what I would call a runaway selection issue. So if you think, again, probably the best analogy here to use is sugar. So our ancestors couldn't get enough fats and sugars to survive. So we have an evolved mechanism that says, ooh, sugar tastes good. Fats taste good. You should crave that because that's what you need to survive. Well, you put that craving in the environment today where you can go down and get 5,000 calories for $5 in under 5 minutes, right? It's a problem. And I think we have those same cravings for connection, belonging, right? The attention paying in the world of our ancestors, because you needed to have very close-knit ties to your tribe. You got kicked out of the tribe, you died. So now fast forward to the environment where you've got 5,000 friends on Facebook and you're constantly need to check in and see where do I stand? What is my ranking? How do I approach these various people? And you're seeing now your tribe is no longer the 20 people that you live with. It's globalized, right? Now I'm comparing myself not just to the 19 other people around me, but to the 8 billion people that I live with. And suddenly, nothing feels quite as well. I mean, if we want to take this a step further, when we're looking at social media, what we're typically doing is we're upward comparing. We're looking at the Bill Gates and we're like, well, I'm rich, but I'm not Bill Gates. And so we're constantly in this state of striving, which again is not healthy for our stress response or for any of the hormonal profiles that we might be looking at.
In a way, and this is great hearing you. You're like the professor who leads to the next question, because I'm thinking, who talks about things on social media? People who are proud, I got a new car, I have a new boyfriend, I got a new job,
right.
I just won lotto. They don't tell us,
right.
well, unless they want some sympathy, well, this isn't going too well, and I got a terrible rating at work today, and blah, blah, blah. So that must,
That's it.
The only people we're looking at and saying, wait, everybody is gaining on me in the race. They're a mile ahead, and I've got to catch up with them. Am I absorbing this correctly?
Oh, you're nailing it, Bill. I mean, you think about the time, at least I'll tell you, when I scroll my social media, it's when I'm sick or I'm feeling kind of gross and I'm laying in bed and I'm like, oh man, just ooh. And I'm like doom scrolling through it. And what am I seeing? I'm seeing people's highlight reels, right? I'm seeing, oh, my friend is in Italy and look, they're dancing in Greece, and like, you're only posting the very best of your life. And so anytime any of us gets on and we're scrolling, we're seeing these highlight reels of everybody else, and it makes us feel inferior. And this is the problem with, again, the stress response and how it developed in humans, is it doesn't matter your actual stress, your actual ranking. It's your perceived level of stress, your perceived level of social hierarchy. And our perception is that we're always behind the ball. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're seeing such a massive increase in depression and anxiety in these next generations. Is, they're of course they're desperately craving connection, and these devices have kind of short-circuited the true connection that they're seeking.
I feel so smart talking to you. I hope our audience feels this way, because you can see I'm taking notes as you're talking, and I'm thinking, good. Gee, I wish I had you as a professor. I would ace those courses, because you're so enthusiastic and what you're saying makes sense, and it's pertinent to our everyday life. Now, you said something in your, I think it was chapter 2 of the book, that to rewire our survival instincts, we must bend time. This sounds like something on late night TV. This device will bend time, $29.95, but wait, there's more.
Yeah, right.
How are you going to teach us to bend time?
Yeah, so bending time is actually one of my favorite concepts. So the brain does this really funky thing. When we're doing the exact same thing all day, every day, or we're constantly distracted, devices, time kind of speeds up for us. And it's why, when you're young, you think about the summers of your youth, they seem to go on forever. And in part, that's because there were novel things that you were doing every day. You were getting together with friends, you were outside, you were doing something different every day. As adults, our days tend to get quote unquote shorter, because what ends up happening is we get into routines. We don't seek novelty. We're not learning new things as often. And so my challenge to all of your listeners is this weekend, or today, do it today. Seek some novelty. When you do that, what it forces your brain to do is layer down, it's like, wait, what is this? This is different. I have to pay attention. And when it has to pay attention, it actually layers down this. It's like a film, right? It has to take new footage. And when it takes new footage in your brain, now when you think back on that weekend, on that day, on that experience, it feels like a longer period passed. So just give this a try today. Drive home a different route, or, go outside and specifically look for 3 things, spot 3 different things, stop at that plaque and read the plaque. See if you can find a cardinal today. Certainly look for ways to insert novelty into your days, and your days will start to expand. So again, I can give you about 1 million different pieces of advice here, but I think one of the most powerful ones is is the concept of FOMO, which I know we're all familiar with, right? That fear of missing out, because we're constantly like, oh gosh, I don't want to miss that. I have to check on this. Well, try just today shifting that to the joy of missing out, JOMO, right? What are you so ingrained in? What are you so deeply curious about that it's actually joyful to be missing out on all of those notifications? When you do that, you begin to bend time. And it's why we see, all of these people that are living really long lives, they're constantly learning new things. They're training their brains in new ways, and it's keeping your brain physically young.
You're making my notes a mess. I have JOMO. I have seek novelty. I have perceived stress. I mean, I'm going to have to go back afterward and clean up this paper. But really, there's some great ideas. Now, a personal question for you. You told me you were working on another book. Is the title going to be JOMO? Seek novelty, or have you given away? Because very often one of our guests will use a term or a word, and I'll say to him, that would be a great title. And it really would. If I saw that, it brings me right in. And if I saw Seek Novelty or JOMO, I'd at least have to look at the book. I love it. I love it too. I think it's terrific.
I may have to change the title, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't settled on my title, but I'll give you the concept. Are you familiar with The Wizard of Oz?
Oh, The Wizard of Oz. Yes.
So I think so many of us are on this, yellow brick road seeking all of the things that we think we need in order to address all of the gaps in our brains, all of the problems, all of the ways to solve our trauma. When in reality, we're seeking these wizards that are just men behind curtains, right? What if you already had the power? What if you already had those ruby slippers and you just needed somebody to say, hey, you've got the power? Right? You've already got all of the things that you need to train your brain to adjust, to shift, and to not pass along these traumas, these fears to the next generation. What if you went all in on your own life right now? So that's the concept behind it. It plays on epigenetics, so this idea of how we can transfer our fears and our experiences throughout our own lives onto the next generation. And I'm pretty excited about it. I'm having a lot of fun. Writing it right now.
I can't wait till we have you on for the next show. And I'm getting in trouble because I already missed a break by running over. You're so interesting. Rebecca, before we go further, I want our audience to know if you're enjoying this as much as I am, you should know that you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan, but the important person here today is Rebecca Heiss, Heiss. Her book is Instinct. Simple, one word, nice bright red cover. And Rebecca, would you tell us about your website?
Absolutely. So you can learn a little bit more about who I am and what I do at my website. It's just www.rebeccaheiss.com.
Now, again, I have so many marks on my paper, but one of the things I marked down, you had a simple statement in your book, but to me it's so true, and I think we all kind of get out of this today. You say, control time, don't let it control you. And I look for takeaways, and I have about 7 that I can take away from what we've talked about and what I saw in your book. Is that a big fault by most of us? We just keep reacting. I
could not have said it more clearly myself, Bill. I think that is exactly it. I think so often, if we do not control time, life gets busy. And when you get busy, life will plan itself for you while you're busy being busy. So my advice is to set very clear intentions on your day. We talked earlier before the show. I've been up since 4, and that's just because 4 a.m. is my magical hour, right? Nobody's up at 4. And so I have this beautiful space and time that I've created just for myself where I can do deep work. And I don't look at emails. I don't look at texts. I don't do any of the things that pull our attention all day long. My guess is your listeners spend about 90% of their day answering emails. Right. So try this. And you don't have to get up at 4 a.m. to do it. Just don't open your email first thing. Control your calendar by literally blocking it out. So in my calendar, I've got it open actually in front of me right now. In my calendar right now, I've got 4 to 7 a.m. blocked for writing. That's my deep time. I get on my computer and I write. I don't open any other tab. There's no pinging or dinging. And then I've got my exercise blocked into my calendar, because if I do not treat it like a meeting, like I would show up for this podcast, I have to show up for myself with the same enthusiasm, with the same, blocked schedule. And then I actually only check my email twice a day. So in the mornings, After my writing period, I check my start and I get through all of my emails. And at the end of the day, I do the same thing. And the principle behind that is called the Ohio principle. It's only handle it once. So often what happens is, the ping comes in and I immediately look at it and I read the whole email. I'm like, okay, I'll get to that. And I set it down. And then when I have to go back to what I'm doing, first of all, there's a cost in like re-energizing and getting back to what I was doing before. But then at some point, I'm going to have to go back to that email and respond to it. So now when I go back to it, I have to reread it again and have to respond to it. And so we're often handling things multiple times throughout the day. Stop reading emails if you're not going to immediately respond. Only handle it once. Control your time or it will control you.
And I can give up that notice from my cleaners that says I'm going to get 5% off if I come in tomorrow morning before 8 o'clock. My life will go on without that.
Your life will go on. It's not a tiger, right? If it's not literally going to kill and eat you, move on. You're going to be all right.
I thought I was the only one, and being an older person, I don't tell people this because I thought you have to look at emails as soon as it goes ping or buzz, or at least once every 3 minutes because everybody else does. And I thought, boy, when people know that I might do it every 4 or 6 hours, they're going to really mark me as, I should be put in an institution someplace. But here you are, the author of a book, someone who's very happy with their life, seems to be in control, and you're saying it's okay. So I have your permission?
You absolutely have my permission. And I want to say, Bill, you don't need my permission. By the way, none of you need anybody else's permission. Just do it for yourself. Give yourself the permission. That's the whole thing behind the Dorothy principle, right? You already have it. Give yourself the permission.
Now, Rebecca,
go own it.
How can we use the points? First of all, I want to encourage people, not only is it a wonderful read and a lot of fun, but even if you just want to talk about it with your friends, you'll be the most interesting person on the next plane you take or next vacation or cocktail party or dating app, whatever. But how would you recommend to people to use this in their everyday life to help them, whether it's to be successful in school, maybe find themselves in the world, find the right mate, or get the right job that makes them happy rather than rich?
Gosh, I mean, I think you kind of, again, Bill, you stole my thunder on that. I think, so much of it is recognizing that you already have that power. I don't think this is a poor sell of my book, but I don't think any book is going to do that. I don't think any guru is going to do that. I don't think any podcast is going to do that. Now, if you need the book as a guide to help, by all means, I've got some tips, some takeaways, here's what to look for in a mate. Here's what to avoid. Here's some of the instincts that are going to drive you towards this particular type of person or this particular type of job that may or may not make you happy. But I think at the core of all of it is a level of self-awareness and curiosity. If you are a curious human being and you can stay open to various possibilities, that is probably the biggest gift you can give yourself, is just staying open to possibility. And then as you read information, say, I wonder if, then try it for yourself. Like, make your own life an experiment, because these principles work for me. And, there's a ton of scientific backing to them, but you might find something that works better. And great. When you do, I want to hear about it.
I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to be president of your fan club. I'm sorry, we're running out of time, but you now, and I'm just going to walk over the other people who want to be president of your fan club. To our audience, our guest has been Rebecca Heiss, Heiss. The book is Instinct. You're going to love it. And go to her website, which is, real quick, Rebecca.
RebeccaHeiss.com.
Easy enough to remember. Thank you so much for being with us today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Bill.
I'd like our audience to know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.